Ryan from Acid Rain Technology. How's it going?
It's going great.
Yeah, up in Acid Rain Technology offices, HQ, at the top of this Seattle high-rise. Before we dive into modules, I don't know any of your background.
Sure.
Our partner Michael, there's two of you in the company. So maybe wind back to how maybe you got into modular.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, my musical background is I'm a guitar player. So I played in bands all through middle school and high school, and as I got into playing with bands, I got really into the recording side of things. So the studio technology side of music, and so got a recording set up. I think in the mid 2000s when I was in high school, that felt like kind of the advent of affordable, high quality home recording technology. Okay. So I think I got to experience kind of a little bit of a watershed moment there, making. And
were these like little 4-tracks and digital recorders, those kind of things?
Yeah, digital audio interfaces, USB or at the time FireWire interfaces. You can get 8 channels and record a whole drum kit.
Yes. And nothing more in the band.
Exactly.
I remember it. You could do the drum kit and nothing else.
Exactly. I got really into the technical side of things through that. And then kind of dropped off with music for a little while, going to college for industrial design.
Okay.
So I studied product design and then got a job in the housewares industry after college and kind of picked music back up as I had my evenings a little freer and access to a little bit more money to pick up gear, and didn't quite have the time to play in bands after college, so that kind of led me into electronic music, which you can make entire records by yourself. Mm-hmm. It seems to be a common thread between a lot of people that I meet who make electronic music and started in a similar way, that it just becomes a little more convenient without having to schedule band practice.
Yeah, so when did the rabbit hole of modular open up?
Sure.
Was that quite quick after getting back into music, or?
Yeah, I think I got into soft synths in the DAW first, and then a little bit thinking about analog keyboards and wanting to acquire the real deal of the VSTs that I've been using for a while. I think I got like an Arturia Microbrute at some point, and that just opened the floodgates for me and really opened me up to this entire rabbit hole of modules. And I was actually really drawn to it from a product design standpoint as well, because most modular companies are just one or two people like making these really, really interesting, sometimes really wild and unusual sound-making products just out of their garages or small workspaces, and then they're able to be sold and be purchased all over the world. And that was really exciting for me as a product designer, kind of the idea that when I was buying a module from a modular maker, I was kind of supporting their dream as a cottage electronics.
Yeah, the cottage industry side, as opposed to kind of startup tech culture that's meant to scale.
Totally.
There's an article recently by TechCrunch that said new companies that are not meant to scale was kind of the tagline.
Exactly.
And they're not. It's still, even the bigger companies still have this smaller cottage kind of vibe, handful of people maybe at most for some of them. I'd like to know, when did you meet Michael? Were you into modular at this point, or have you known Michael a lot longer?
I was into modular for a few years before I met Michael, actually.
Okay.
And so I had gotten into the hobby and gotten a little bit into the DIY kit side of things, light DIY, since I didn't have much of an electrical engineering background.
Yeah.
And Michael and I actually met on a city bus here in Seattle.
Okay.
Which, if anyone watching is from Seattle, knows that no one ever talks to each other on public transit here.
So who broke the ice first?
I overheard Michael talking to another friend about Eurorack, which hearing Eurorack on public transportation was like, who the heck is bringing this up. So I turned around and immediately kind of jumped into the conversation and exchanged info. And now about 2 years later, here we are making modules together. And so my background is in industrial design and product management, and his background is in software and electrical engineering. So I feel like it was a very lucky combination of skills to.
Well, I think it makes
together.
A huge difference when one person just doesn't have to do everything.
Yeah.
Brand, panel design, interface design, circuit design, code if there's DSP involved, or just general digital technology. So it was about a year ago, maybe, you started working on the Switchblade, the first module.
Yeah, we'd actually begun working on it a few months before that, but we believe we sold our first Switchblade in late October of 2018. That would have been. So we had been tooling around a little bit with ideas before that.
And were you playing around with a lot of other modules that were out there? Because it's a very clever way of switching, muting. There's a whole host of tricks in that module that have clearly, there's been a lot of, without meaning to be kind of too flattering or anything, really intelligent thought that's gone into how this utility will work.
Yeah. I think on that note, a big priority of our philosophy in general is user interface. It's kind of I would say our modules start as either a musical concept and or a user interface concept. We tend not to start with like a technical constraint or a really specific component, like many other modules. Great modules are built around maybe an IC or something like that. I think we take a little bit of a different view at designing modules and starting with the way that a human will approach the buttons or knobs or information that's being presented on the panel.
Yeah. That speaks to Chainsaw as well.
Yeah.
Which is a current module. 3 oscillators, big kind of super saw, super pulse stacks. Very simple to use. Sounds great. It's just got enough features to do what you want without being bloated.
Yeah.
Did any of that come from using the DAW? Soft synths, was it that case? And I think a lot of users and potentially companies as well feel this frustration of, I can play all these notes on these other synths, or I can do the oscillator swarms and the detuned stacks. Did it come from that experience coming forward, or kind of where did that come from? Because it's a unique product.
Yeah. It did come from, on my side, from my background in composing songs in a DAW. I'm a bit of a songwriter and come from a guitar background, so I really like harmony and chords and chord progressions within my music. Even the electronic music I was making before modular relied a lot on that. So, but then I also really enjoy the kind of the ergonomics of having everything inside the rack in modular. So the Chainsaw was a kind of, both the Switchblade and the Chainsaw were really products born out of scratching our own itch in a way, and filling a need that we both had in our racks. That for the Chainsaw was not taking up 30 HP for 3 oscillators to play a chord that might just sit in the background of a patch.
And again, did the idea of it being stereo come from that kind of place? DAW work, previous audio work? Because often you don't find stereo right at the kind of oscillator sound source core. Eurorack's growing into nice stereo filtering options and effects, but not often right at the sound source, unless, as you say, you're stacking multiple modules.
Yeah. Michael had done some research into some papers around the Roland JP8080 or JP8000, I believe it is, was the full keyboard version. Yeah, the classic early 90s trance synth. And both of us separately had kind of a soft spot for big trance super saws. I mean, I think often they get a little bit of bad rap in the electronic music production world as being cheesy or...
Some of the music has been, but I don't think as a sound it invalidates that as a sound source or or core of a patching anyway. There's definitely some cheesy trance.
For sure.
And I've definitely listened to it. Plenty of cheesy trance.
Yeah, more than once.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
But we like to think of it at its most fundamental level. It's a high harmonic content waveform oscillator that sounds great under filters. You have a lot to chew on with a filter. So, and super saws are in all sorts of music. Lots of pop music still to this day leverages the sound because it's just really functional. And the stereo component of it came from the idea that, we have 7 waves per voice to deal with. So why not try panning them a little bit to the left and right, since there are multiple waveforms that can be individually manipulated in the firmware of the module. And I believe I had maybe heard it before in some super saw VSTs.
Yeah, there's some soft synths that'll do like an oscillator spread pan thing.
Yeah, I think I was using maybe Zebra by UHE, and they had a parameter like that. And I use it a lot in my music production that creates very wide, lush pads in the background of music.
So moving forward from Chainsaw, we've got Navigator, also some drum stuff you've been teasing, some morphing drums. How much you want to get into those products as well? Maybe tease as much of the new stuff as you like, or as little as you like.
Well, I know the drum has made it into a few videos online, and it's been present at some of our appearances at modular shows. We're still very excited about it. It's been quite a development process to figure out exactly how we're going to tease the parameters behind the controls on the panel. The idea being that each of the panel controls changes a number of drum synthesis parameters behind the panel and navigates your drum sounds through a parameter space that all sounds good. That's a frustration Michael and I have both had with some of the drum modules, or even just drum patches we've created, that there are a lot of dead spots that aren't as inspiring sonically to us.
Well, we heard at Velocity here in Seattle this previous weekend, a kick drum morph to a snare kind of beautifully. How much time are you putting into kind of scaling the morphing of these parameters? Is that the majority of the work, kind of fine-tuning these points?
It is now, for sure.
Right.
We're in that phase of developing the module. Probably going to be working with some beta testers as well to get outside opinions and other ears on the module. We've met a lot of amazing people through these events, like Velocity and KnobCon and Superbooth before that we'll start reaching out to people and trying to get some other opinions on what drum sounds work for them and their music.
Yeah.
It was wonderful to hear it on the big PA.
Oh, it sounded great.
Yeah.
I said the kick, the way the noise kind of almost sucked out of the tail of the kick into the impact on the snare was certainly not like any patches I've made for drums.
Nice.
So it's clearly, I mean, you don't have to give us the number, but it's clearly morphing a lot of parameters.
20 or 30 parameters behind the panel. It's actually the inspiration for the module came from a Eurorack adaptation of the Simmons SDSV drum synthesizer module.
Is that the SY05?
Yeah, I don't remember which. It was
There's been a couple.
Yeah, Timo Rosendahl, I believe.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Designed an adaptation DIY PCB panel, and I built one up, and it's amazing and creates some really incredible 80s drum sounds, especially those Miami Vice toms and stuff.
Yeah, those little disco hits and things.
Yeah, but it's got probably 22 knobs on the front of it, and takes quite some fiddling to get between a kick and a snare and a tom. So we thought bringing our user interface philosophy to that space of drum synthesis would be an interesting and kind of playable module.
So where do you see the company kind of going? What's your philosophy going forward?
Yeah, we're very interested in Eurorack as a live instrument, whether that be live on a stage or even live in a studio setting where you're...
A played instrument.
Exactly, a played instrument that you're using all of your fingers on, and maybe even a microphone. We're working on some ideas there with the voice in Eurorack. We saw some great performances at Velocity that leveraged a microphone into a lot of synthesizer gear, and that was really inspiring. And so using all your fingers on the rack and really interacting with it constantly as you're making music. And I think you'll see a lot of that in our upcoming modules. A lot of buttons, a lot of sliders, a lot of course, knobs.
Yeah. So, as I said, I think intelligent interfaces, just the right amount that you need without the kind of excess baggage that sometimes we like. We like playing with these things, but they maybe don't lend themselves to performance quite as well.
Yeah, it can be, from a development standpoint and a technical standpoint, very, very tempting to add and add and add features to these modules, especially with the advent of pretty powerful microcontrollers being able to be put in small footprint modules like our chainsaw. The chainsaw doesn't necessarily leverage 100% of the CPU cycles of that microcontroller. But that's kind of on purpose because we feel like it's a concise concept that works well for a person interacting with it.
Yeah, I don't think anything's gained when you just try to make the use of every single thing that's available, either in patching, in a setup, or in a circuit design.
Yeah,
I don't think it lends itself.
We've been a little frustrated by kind of blind sub menus and multi-button push and power cycle
shift function,
shift
and all
functions,
this.
I definitely understand the impetus to add them, but it's something I think we want to think really hard about designing our modules.